Hi everyone, this is Jan with What You Make It, and you know that I love using my Copic markers to create imagery for my cards and other mixed media. And several of you have asked me if I would do a tutorial on how I create shading and contrast when I'm coloring. And I'm happy to do that. That's what I'm going to do today, but I want to just be really honest with you and make sure you know that I am not Copic certified. I have watched a lot of instructors and I've kind of developed my own style, and I'm going to share that with you today, but I just want you to know it may not be exactly what Copic would tell you to do. So I'm going to be coloring for you this bouquet of sunflowers that I used on a card recently. I turned the camera on and just kind of captured what I was doing, and what you're going to see happen right now is really and truly what happened. I pulled out my yellow greens that I was going to do, and I started in working on the first couple of leaves, and I realized that I wasn't getting a really good idea of where each of those leaves was going to fit into the rest of the bouquet. So this is something that I do when I have a really intricate image that I'm going to color. So I took my lightest shade and I went in and I colored all of the areas that were going to be green, so that as I went back to working on the leaves and creating that contrast, I had a visual of where each leaf fell into that process. Now normally I start dark to light, but on small areas I sometimes will fill in with the lightest color just to kind of get the paper wet. So I'm now going back in and building out the greens. And something that that is really important, I think, in creating contrast is to work towards a very dark color. I find that we really usually we stop too soon. We don't add enough deep color in there. And sometimes I do what I'm doing right now, and that is I go get another color from a little bit bluer shade of whatever I'm working. I was working with yellow green, so just a straight green 46 is actually going to add quite a bit of that blue shading. And when we're trying to do shades, violets or shades of blue really do give our eye the sense that there is difference in depth. Now I'm going to show you here what I do. This sunflower is way at the back, so we're going to make it, things in the distance tend to be darker, things in the foreground tend to be lighter. So I'm using this range of yellows from Y13 up to Y19, and I'm just working my way around. Again, because it's a small space, I started and filled in with that light. You'll see me when I'm doing other coloring that I usually don't do that, but I find that when I am working on a small area, and I am also working on kind of an off-white piece of paper, which is I did for these because they needed to be a little bit more rustic, that saturating the paper so that you don't have to use as much ink actually keeps you from getting some of the bleeding and other things that can destroy your images. So you'll notice here I'm going in, and wherever I think there's going to be a shadow, if there's a petal that's tucked back behind one of the others, or there's a leaf that is leaning over it, or anything that might cause a little shadow, I specifically put a dark one of the darker shades in there, and I blend back and forth and just keep blending until I feel like I've gotten what I wanted. But I realized that I was losing, even as I was blending back and forth, I realized I was losing some of those some of the depth that was there. And so sometimes I will go back in with my darkest color and I'll put I'll lay down some dark areas that I really am not going to blend an awful lot. I may just kind of blend mildly. And then I realized I just wasn't getting the deepness of tone. So here I am, I've gone to another color family entirely, Y35, and I'm just adding a little bit more contrast. And now I've gotten my blue violet quadruple zero. Now remember, when I was working on the leaves, I said that to add a little bit of blue into something will actually give you that sense that there's shading. And because this was the furthest back and I really needed it to have depth and contrast, I pulled the blue violet out and did that. Now you can see I've colored the rest of the sunflowers, but I am now going back in with that blue violet and adding in just a touch of shading, because I really want these flowers to have depth, particularly because they're in a picture. There's lots of depth in this arrangement. So now I'm working on the brown centers, and I'm working with E41 through E49. And you notice, even though there's a bit of a jump between 44 and 49, I wanted to get the deepest color that was available in that color family. And I am just going to kind of work this circular pattern here by keeping the lights on one side and the darks on the others, but I want to get plenty of that deep color in there. I think that is one of the things that I feel like when I'm watching people color, or I'm looking at an image that I don't necessarily think I've quite gotten right yet, I find that the thing that actually is usually missing is that depth of field, that depth of color. We tend to kind of blend everything out till it's almost everything's in the same hue, and I think our eyes like contrast. It tells us what is further away, what's closer. It tells us where the light is coming from. Those kinds of things are the things that probably we need to work on a little bit more. I find that that's usually when I start liking how I've colored something, is when I have add those bits of contrast and some shading by keeping some of that color really dark. So I'm sorry my hand is in the way, but what I decided to do to, again, keep some of that really dark in there was to add some spots or dots into the centers of the flowers with my two darkest colors. And I do think that that kind of helps our eye have some of that contrast in there. Now for a stripe like this, because it's on a rounded or cylindrical piece of the picture, I try and keep a highlight in the center, and I just work putting the darks on the outside and bringing those in. Ours, particularly in this R24 to R29 range, they blend really well with each other. You don't have to do much work with them. They just kind of naturally do what you want them to do. And so you'll see that it doesn't take much. I just do a little flicking of the color out. I find that blending really works best when we flick from the darker color into the lighter color. And just keep a nice little highlight in the center there. Want to darken it up again. I just feel like I always stop a little short of where I really want it to be. So I usually will stop and take a look at it and go back in and add a little bit more dark. So now I'm going to do the blue, and I'm going to show you, now that I'm in a bigger area, I'm going to do what I normally do, and that is I lay down a highlight to maintain that center, and then I start working in my darks and flicking from the edge into the center. Now in my head, this particular picture or vase really had a lot of brush strokes in it, so I'm not going to blend it. I'm actually going to keep some of these flicked motions in it, like it had I don't know, maybe been painted with a little bit of some of the brush strokes still showing. I'm going in with these B30s, and I find that these actually are a little tough to blend, and so keeping a small work area and blending from light, from dark into light really helps. I'm only using the very darkest one, mostly over on the left hand side, or what is down at the bottom, because in my plan the light is coming from the right hand side, so I needed there to be something that was darker over on the left hand side to just be sure and give the viewer the sense that the object that they're looking at is cylindrical, but it's also the left side of the picture is the furthest away, and I put a little dark down there where it would kind of be going back underneath to the edge of the picture, to the bottom edge of the picture. So there you have it. That is the whole arrangement colored, and when I took a look at it, I realized I needed to help it pop off of that background, so I'm going around with the entire around all the edges with this blue violet quadruple zero, and you can see there that it really does help it pop off of the rustic cream cardstock that I later did a some collage stamping on. I think that shadow just helps it pop just a little bit more. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope this is helpful. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think, and I'll be back to share something again soon.